Baby Reindeer seems to be Netflix's biggest show in a long while in terms of impact in society and the sheer effect of word of mouth. When I released my breakdown of the show a couple of weeks back, it wasn't in the limelight half as much as what it is now. And personally, I'm so glad that the show got the recognition that it deserved over time. Baby Reindeer was a look at trauma, stalking, abuse, and it provided an insight into the mind of Richard Gadd's traumatic time in his late 20s, and it was perfectly executed. It got a 100% Rotten Tomatoes score and a pretty solid 8.1 on IMDb. With it having a large impact on not only me, but also many of its viewers, I thought I'd take a deeper look into the show and discuss why it's done exactly that. So let's get into it. Here is why Baby Reindeer is hauntingly perfect. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The level of darkness that it shows. One reason why I think this show has had the effect that it's had on the viewers is down to the levels of darkness that it was prepared to go to, and also what it was prepared to show us. For example, not only was the show about Martha being this stalker that was plaguing Donny's mind and life, but it was also about Donny coming to terms with his sexuality, navigating the space in a way which was unhealthy, and also him suffering abuse at the hands of somebody that he thought was benefiting his career, but realistically he was being taken advantage of and severely harmed. His life was falling apart around him through no true fault of his own, and the show wasn't holding back in what it was prepared to put on screen, ultimately making the weight of the suffering really sit on our shoulders and even make us want to turn away at some points because we're just not used to seeing it depicted in that way on screen. We saw Donny being unhappy in his life within many aspects of it, and the shot that really hit home for me, which showed just how much he'd changed, was when we were at the start of episode 4 of the show and he was embarking onto the early stages of his comedy career in Edinburgh. In that opening section, he was smiling, excited, and eager to make it as a comic. Throughout the rest of the show, even before episode 4 and afterwards, because it was several years later after the abuse that he went through and after the stalking had started, we never saw him have a fraction of that happiness that he had during the beginning of episode 4. They were almost like two completely different characters, and it showed how slowly, over the course of time, all of these events that somebody can go through at the hands of somebody else and the thoughts that one can have in their mind can ultimately transform somebody, even if they try their best to put on a brave face. The entirety of episode 4 was almost like some kind of nightmare that we were watching. With Donny meeting Darien O'Connor, we saw Donny slowly morphing into a shell of the person that he once was. The scene where Donny was being taken advantage of when he passed out was a scene that I just found so difficult to watch, and there aren't many shows that go to the levels of explicitness to get across what happened. It was only a couple of seconds, but it was enough to paint out that whole situation to be like a nightmare. This show entered territories that not many shows are prepared to go to, and I think that is one of the main key reasons as to why it stood out and got across to many of its viewers. The episode structure. One thing that I really noticed about this show after completing it was the episode structure, and the fact that it didn't really have the traditional structure that you're used to seeing on a Netflix show. Usually, a Netflix series has between 8 and 10 episodes of around 45 to 50 minutes for a show like this. However, Baby Reindeer went against the grain. It only had 7 episodes, which feels quite strange for it to have an odd number, and the episode length ranged from being as short as about 25 minutes to some being as long as 45 minutes. So the timing was all over the place, but I think that was something that worked in its favour and suited the tone and feel that the show was going for. It felt like Richard Gadd was given full creative freedom with this show to tell it in the way that he wanted to, the way that he thought was best, because after all, it was his story and the events that he went through in his life. Plus, it had also been a stage production in the past in which he'd created and was in full control of too, so it felt like the platform didn't really implement runtime constraints or set a quota of an amount of episodes that he needed to hit. It came across like they said, just tell the story in the way that you want to and feel is right. I don't know if that's 100% the case, but it definitely gives off that impression, as the structure of it most definitely stands out when compared to every other show on the platform. The chaotic and uncertain nature of the runtime and episode count very much suits the style and story well, because the story itself is chaotic and unstructured. You almost don't know what problem Donny is going to encounter next, if he's going to see Martha around a corner, and if she's going to ultimately destroy his life beyond repair. So by not truly knowing what was coming in the next episode or how long it was going to be really did add to the experience when watching the show. The performances, but especially Richard Gadd's close connection to it. When talking about what made this show so convincing and perfect, it would almost be a crime to not discuss the performances by the main cast members, Richard Gadd and Jessica Gunning. Each of them delivered their role so well, but it has to be said that Gadd was a level above the rest. Honestly, I don't know how he was able to enter such a dark part of his mind and relive his own experiences on screen in a fictional environment and be able to get through it. It must take such strength in order to be able to do that, and I think that's why his performance was such a touching one that really translated across the screen and just felt so real. Knowing that the person that was playing Donny experienced everything that we were seeing happening in real life is something that just sends shivers down your spine when seeing his performance in the show. That was one of the most heartbreaking and haunting things about Baby Reindeer. The speech that he delivered in episode 6 was one of the most emotional and powerful things that I've seen on TV for a while. The fact that for years he'd kept everything pent up inside of him and was suffering in silence, to then release it all in a public environment. The performance that he delivered was just incredible. The long lingering shots where the emotions were just draining out of him, it really enabled us to get drawn in and hang on every word that he was saying. It was definitely one of the most powerful moments in the show, and it felt like everything that we'd witnessed had almost been leading up to that speech. It was just perfect. When it came to Jessica Gunning, she absolutely smashed her role as the stalker Martha. There was this mystery behind the character, almost this dead behind the eyes look and filled with just pure obsession that was present whenever she was looking at Donny. The laugh that she had, which would just cut through the loudest of rooms, and also the tone of voice and haunting playfulness that would be present, but then contrasted with aggression and rage in the blink of an eye, really did highlight the ability that Jessica Gunning had. The virality that the show got. Now, this is something that you often see with certain shows on Netflix. When they break through into the cultural part of society, it ultimately ends up benefiting the show. Word of mouth is still an extremely powerful thing when it comes to TV shows, and this is a prime example of that. Baby Reindeer was up almost 400% in its viewing figures week on week between week 1 and week 2, a percentage that I feel I rarely see on breakout shows. We've seen the impact that social media has had in shows with the likes of Wednesday, Stranger Things, Dharma, and many other big hits on the platform, but this one had a slightly different impact in the real world. Because the show is based on true events, this spared many social media detectives to try and source out the real people that Martha and Darien were based on, something which Richard Gadd said that he didn't want people to do. However, despite that, many people have found the real Martha, and other celebrities have had fingers pointed towards them about potentially being the person that Darien was based on. So this natural speculation is something that pushed the show even further into the public eye, and most likely got more people interested in it based off the back of it. This show is quite literally like no other show that I've seen. I was blown away when I watched it, and like I said, I think it's hauntingly, heartbreakingly perfect in a way that no other show has come close to before. So, there you have it, why Baby Reindeer was perfect. If you want to see my full breakdown on Baby Reindeer, then click on the card in the top corner. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find videos on the latest TV shows. What did you think of this show? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.